Today's video is about blood pressure, BP, and determinants of blood pressure, or other factors that influence our blood pressure. I'm sure each of us might have ever visited a clinic and his blood pressure would have been taken. When you go to a clinic, they would probably use a BP machine, a blood pressure machine. This would be either automatic or it may be manual to find your blood pressure. And as they are finding your blood pressure, there are certain things they will always put across. In the medical world, they will always talk of factors like systole, or rather systolic blood pressure, and then diastolic blood pressure. But before we look at all those ones, let's first find out what's blood pressure. Blood pressure is more of an hydrostatic pressure. Blood pressure is an hydrostatic pressure which is exerted onto the walls of the arteries as blood moves through them after being pumped by the heart. So, that particular force, if we have our artery, for example the aorta, the force being applied by the blood that is being pumped by the heart onto the walls of the aorta or any other artery, this force being applied by the moving blood, the hydrostatic force being applied by the moving blood onto the walls of our arteries is what we are going to be considering as blood pressure. And we are going to be summarizing blood pressure as BP. It's going to be summarized as BP, blood pressure. We are going to be summarizing it as BP, blood pressure. We have two types of blood pressure when we are to talk about blood pressure. We have one we term as the systolic blood pressure, and we have another one we term to as the diastolic blood pressure. Systolic blood pressure, we know that systole is a state in which the heart has contracted. So, systolic blood pressure will be the blood pressure measured from your body when the walls of the ventricles have contracted. When the myocardium, the ventricular myocardium, has contracted. We shall consider it as the systolic blood pressure. Whereas the diastolic blood pressure, this will be the pressure we are going to pick off the walls of the arteries when the walls of the ventricles have relaxed. So, diastolic blood pressure is the pressure exerted onto the walls of the arteries when the ventricular myocardium is relaxed, is under a state of diastole, ventricular relaxation. Yeah. So, those are the two types of blood pressure. So, in blood pressure, when we are measuring blood pressure, we shall probably talk about terms like systolic blood pressure, and we shall also talk about another term like diastolic blood pressure. So, systolic blood pressure, when the blood pressure exerted, or rather the pressure exerted on the walls of the arteries, when the heart is contracting, when the ventricles are contracting. Whereas there's diastolic blood pressure, the pressure exerted onto the walls of the arteries when the walls of the ventricles of the heart are relaxed. They are under relaxation. They are under relaxation. They are under relaxation. Now we want to talk about the factors, or rather the determinants of blood pressure. what are the factors that determine blood pressure? What are the determinants of blood pressure? So all those ones. But before we consider that, in an healthy human being, a young youth, we would expect the systolic blood pressure, the pressure when the ventricles are contracted, we would expect it to be around 110 millimeters of mercury. Whereas the diastolic blood pressure in a young, stable, healthy youth, it would be probably around 75 millimeters of mercury. Around 75 millimeters of mercury. Yeah. So, when we are looking at BP, BP can be expressed as systolic blood pressure all over the diastolic blood pressure. So, if we take an individual having a systolic blood pressure of 110 and the diastolic blood pressure of 75, therefore its blood pressure would be 110 all over 75 millimeters of mercury. But we want to find out what are the determinants of blood pressure. What are the factors that influence an individual's blood pressure? What are the factors that influence an individual's blood pressure? So we are going to be listing them one by one, and we shall be explaining each of the factors. But all these factors that are determining blood pressure, we shall be deriving them out of the formula, or rather the equation, which will be used to find blood pressure. So, BP, blood pressure, will equal to our cardiac output multiplied, so blood pressure will equal to cardiac output multiplied by the peripheral resistance. In this case, if we are considering the systemic saturation, it is going to be the systemic vesicular resistance. And we want to find out what each of these means. So, we have seen that blood pressure will equal to cardiac output. First of all, what is cardiac output? Cardiac output, this is the amount of blood being ejected out of the ventricles, out of each ventricle in every minute. So, cardiac output is the amount of blood. So, if the heart is contracting, our heart, as it keeps on contracting and relaxing, the total amount of blood that is going to be ejected out of each of the ventricle, out of, for example, the left ventricle here, the amount of blood that will be ejected out of this ventricle in every minute, that's what we are going to be considering as the cardiac output. And we would probably know that the cardiac output of both the left ventricle and the right ventricle are actually equal. They are equal. If the left ventricle is ejecting, or if the left ventricle has a cardiac output of around 5 liters per minute, it would mean that also the right ventricle would probably have a cardiac output of 5 liters per minute of blood. So, that would be the thing. The main reason of that, or rather the main significance, is to make sure that none of the either sides of the ventricles is empty at any particular point through the system. So you would find, for example, if we had the cardiac output of this side being less than that of this side, you would probably find that at one point you would find the ventricles contracting when one of the ventricles is actually empty and the other would be overloaded. So that is the cardiac output. On average, if we are to consider the cardiac output on average on an average youth who is healthy, it would probably be 5 liters. It will probably be 5 liters of blood per minute At rest it would be probably 5 liters of blood per minute. But this volume of blood tends to increase. It increases with increase in exercise. As you do more exercise, you would expect the cardiac output to increase. We shall explain that further after explaining the systemic vascular resistance. So, we have said the BP equals to cardiac output times systemic vascular resistance. We have found out that cardiac output is the amount of blood being ejected out of each of the ventricle in a minute. Now, systemic ventricular resistance. The light had gone off. So, systemic ventricular resistance. Systemic ventricular resistance, this is the resistance the blood is going to face, the resistance the blood experiences, the resistance the blood has to overcome when it is passing through our arterioles. So, as blood moves away from the heart, it will move through the aorta, for example, in the systemic circulation, to move through the aorta, to the arteries, then to the arterioles. So, in the arterioles, we find a high level of resistance at times, and this high level of resistance can be adjusted because the arterioles are made of a thin lining which is supplied, which is rich in nervous supplements. So nerves, it is rich in nerves. Therefore, it can be controlled by the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. It means in the arterioles can undergo vasoconstriction and vasodilation accordingly. So when they undergo vasoconstriction, they become smaller. It would mean that blood would be overcoming a greater resistance. And when blood overcomes a greater resistance, it means the systemic vascular resistance would be higher, which would imply that the blood pressure would also increase. The blood pressure would also increase. So the higher the resistance, the higher the blood pressure. We can see this, for example, in situations where individuals have arteriosclerosis, arteriosclerosis, formation of atheroma formation in the arteries. So when you have your artery, and this is the lumen of your artery, an example, in arteriosclerosis, a plug, an atheroma is going to be formed in the lumen, which will actually reduce the diameter. It reduces the diameter of the lumen of the arteries. So when the diameter is reduced, it means blood is going to be facing a greater resistance as it moves through the arteries, which would imply that the blood pressure will actually raise. So, if you increase the cardiac output, blood pressure rises. And when you also increase the systemic vascular resistance, blood pressure also rises. So, that is blood pressure. Now, we want to find out further. So we have seen that factors that are affecting our blood pressure, we are going to derive all of them from this equation. And this is the time to start deriving them. So, in a simple terms, then we shall find and summarize them at the end of the video. So, but what is cardiac output? Well, let's summarize it at CO. So, cardiac output is equal, so the amount of blood being ejected out of the heart per minute is the same as saying that the heart rate, how many beats is the heart pumping in every minute? It's the same as saying heart rate times. It is the same as saying that heart rate times. So cardiac output is equal to the heart rate, the number of beats the heart is beating, is pumping per minute, the number of beats the heart is pumping per minute, multiplied by the amount of blood being ejected out of the ventricle every contraction. The amount of blood being ejected out of the ventricle every contraction. The amount of blood being ejected out of the ventricle in every contraction. And this amount of blood can actually be called so we can summarize it as ventricular output. So per contraction ventricular output, per contraction ventricular output. But there is a scientific term we are meant to call it, which I may not be probably remembering at this time. So let's consider it as the ventricular per contraction output, the amount of blood being ejected out of each ventricle on every contraction, out of each ventricle on every contraction. So when we are going to be looking at the factors affecting of the determinants of blood pressure, we are going to be specifically considering the factors that affect the heart rate, the factors that affect the amount of blood being ejected out of the ventricle every contraction, and the amount of blood. And we shall also consider factors like the resistance the blood is meeting as it passes through the ventricles. As it passes through the arteries, the arterioles. So let's start one by one. So we are starting on the determinants of blood pressure. The first determinant of blood pressure is the preload. The preload. Preload is the measure. It is the extent to which the walls of the ventricles are stretched by the blood entering them during ventricular filling. That is preload. So preload is the extent, is the measure of the extent to which the walls of the ventricles, the ventricular walls, are stretched during ventricular filling, during the phase when the ventricles are being filled up with blood. That is during ventricular relaxation. When the ventricles are relaxed, blood is coming from the arterioles into the ventricles. So preload is the extent to which the ventricle or the ventricular myocardium is stretched during ventricular filling and up to the end of ventricular filling by the blood entering it. And in the preload, how does preload affect blood pressure? This is how it does it. According to the Frank Starling rule of the heart, according to the Frank Starling law of the heart, we see that the greater the walls of the ventricles are stretched during ventricular filling, that is preload, the greater the extent at which the walls of the ventricles are stretched during ventricular filling, the greater the level of contraction of the myocardium during ventricular depolarization, or rather ventricular systole. So, according to the Frank Starling law of the heart, we see that the greater the preload, the greater the rate or the extent at which the walls of the ventricles will contract during ventricular contraction. Which would imply that a greater force would be exerted onto the blood, a greater pressure. So blood would move out of the ventricles with a very great pressure. The second factor which is affecting our blood pressure, is the EDV. EDV is standing for end of diastolic volume. In the end of diastolic volume, it's like how much volume of blood, what amount of blood will be inside the ventricles what amount of blood will be inside the ventricles by the time the ventricles start to contract. Because when the ventricles are relaxed, blood is entering into the ventricles. When the ventricles are relaxed, blood is entering the ventricles. Now, after that, the ventricles go into ventricular contraction. So they contract. So EDV is end of diastolic volume. The amount of blood which will be inside the ventricles by the time the ventricles start to contract. That is at the start of ventricular contraction, ventricular depolarization. And we see that the higher the EDV, the more the blood which will be inside the ventricles by the point of contraction, the more the level of preload. Because if a lot of blood is inside the ventricles, if we have a very high EDV, the EDV is very raised, it would mean that the walls of the ventricles would be more stretched. The walls of the ventricles would be more stretched. That is, it means it would increase the preload. The preload would become higher. And when the preload becomes higher, according to the Frank-Starling law of the heart, it would imply that the walls of the ventricles would contract with a greater magnitude. The more the walls are stretched, the greater the magnitude of contraction during ventricular contraction. That's the thing. But what is affecting EDV? What determines the amount of blood entering into the ventricles? So, what will determine the amount of blood that will be inside the ventricles by the end of ventricular feeding? It will be the venous return. The venous return. How much blood is returning to the heart? Most especially to the right atrium, and the left atrium through the veins. That is venous return. And we shall get more further explanation about the venous return in the next video. Most probably in the next 2 videos we shall talk about the venous return and also find out the factors that affect the venous return. So EDV. So the higher the EDV, that is end of the diastolic volume, the higher the amount of blood that is inside the ventricles. The more the stretching of the walls of the ventricles, which would imply the higher the preload, therefore the greater the force of contraction, which will mean that the blood pressure will raise. So if you raise the EDV, the end of the diastolic volume, you would probably raise the blood pressure. The blood pressure would be more raised. The blood pressure would increase. Another factor which is affecting, or another determinant of BP, of blood pressure, another determinant of blood pressure is afterload. What is afterload? Afterload, this is the measure of the pressure that is going to be required to push the semilunar valves open, these 2 valves, this one and this one. That is the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve. They are called semilunar valves because they have that semi shape of the moon, lunar shape, semilunar valve. So these ones. So afterload, it can be defined as the measure of the pressure that will be required to be generated by the walls of the ventricle. The measure of the pressure required to be generated by the walls of the ventricle in order to open up the semilunar valve, this valve and this valve, so that blood can go into the arteries, that is both to the lungs to pick oxygen and through the aorta to the systemic circulation. And afterload is actually affected by the factor of specifically the diameter of our arteries. In case the arteries, let's take an example of the aorta. In case our aorta has a smaller diameter, that would mean that less pressure would be required to force the aortic valves open. Less pressure would be required to force the aortic valves open. And since less pressure would be required to force the aortic valves open, this would imply that the blood pressure would be low. Because less pressure, the heart will require to put in less pressure to force these valves open. Therefore, the blood pressure at the end of the course will be low. Your blood pressure is going to be low. Low blood pressure. If we have very large arteries, our aorta, if our aorta is very large, the aorta is large, the lumen of the aorta is large, would probably require more pressure. The heart would be required to generate a larger pressure in order to force the semilunar valves open. And since it would require a large pressure to force the semilunar valves open, that would generally also affect the entire blood pressure. The blood pressure would be elevated. It will be high. So, afterload is more of a measure of the pressure required to be generated by the heart in order to force these semilunar valves open during ventricular contraction. The higher the pressure required to open them, the higher the afterload. And which will mean the higher the blood pressure. So, the higher the pressure required to open these valves, the higher the pressure the heart will have to exert to open them. Therefore, the higher the afterload, which will imply that the higher the blood pressure will be. The blood pressure will be elevated. The fourth determinant of blood pressure, is the volume of blood we have in the body. The volume of blood we have in the body. If an individual has a lot of blood in the body, if you have a lot of blood in the body, that would imply that it would actually increase. It would increase the preload. It would increase venous return 1, which venous return will increase the preload, which venous return will also increase the EDV, the end of diastolic volume. It would mean more blood will be inside your ventricles at the end of every ventricular diastole. Or we can say more blood will be inside your ventricles by the start of ventricular systole. And if more blood is there, it would mean that our preload will increase. The extent to which the walls of the ventricles would be stretched would increase. Therefore, coming to the Frank-Starling law of the heart, the walls of the ventricles would contract with a greater magnitude. 2, the EDV would increase, the end of the diastolic volume would increase. The amount of blood that would be inside the ventricles would increase by the end of ventricular filling, which would imply that the ventricular wall would be more stretched. And when the ventricular walls are more stretched, it would actually increase the preload. Therefore, the walls of the ventricles would contract with a greater force. And all these ones, preload, end of diastolic volume, the afterload, they are all affecting the cardiac output, the amount of blood. The volume of blood, they are all affecting the cardiac output, the amount of blood that would be coming or that is ejected out of the ventricle, out of each ventricle in every minute. They are all affecting that. Yeah. Then we can also consider other factors that actually affect our blood pressure. We can consider, so all these factors are coming within the heart. So in a summary, to make it simpler, if we look at the factors affecting blood pressure, we have two main factors. We have intrinsic factors. We have intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. So, we have two main factors affecting blood pressure: intrinsic factors and extrinsic factors. Intrinsic factors, those ones are coming from the inside of the heart, they are within the heart. And they are these ones we have been talking about. The preload, the end of the diastolic volume, the afterload, and the volume of blood the individual has. Then we have the extrinsic factors. These ones are originating from outside the heart. And in extrinsic factors, we have two main factors under extrinsic factors. Two main factors. We have the nervous system and the hormonal system. We have the nervous system and the hormonal system. The nervous system, this one, it directly affects the blood pressure. Immediately, it is a short-term control of blood pressure. We know that the heart is supplied with nerves. We have the vagus nerve, which is parasympathetic. It is inhibiting the cardiac abilities. It is inhibiting the cardiovascular abilities. Then we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is stimulating the work of the heart, stimulating it. So, here in the nervous system, we would expect things like the vagus nerve bringing in nerve impulses that would slow down the heart rate. And when the heart rate is slowed down, it would imply that the cardiac output would lower. When the cardiac output lowers, it would imply that the blood pressure is going to also lower, because blood pressure equals to cardiac output times systemic ventricular resistance, or rather systemic vascular resistance. Sorry, not ventricular. Systemic vascular resistance. So you lower heart rate, it would mean that the cardiac output would also lower, which would imply that the blood pressure also will be low. However, nervous impulses, or rather nerve impulses from the sympathetic nervous system, would actually stimulate the heart rate. It would stimulate the heart to contract on a faster rate. And when it starts contracting on a faster rate, it would mean that would increase the heart rate. And when the heart rate increases, it would imply that the cardiac output would also increase. When the cardiac output increases, that implies that also the heartbeat, or rather the blood pressure would also increase. So, sympathetic increases heart rate, which would increase the cardiac output. On increasing the cardiac output, that would result into increase in blood pressure. Then the other extrinsic factors originating from the outside of the heart and affecting blood pressure is hormonal. We have hormonal inotropic factors. Hormonal inotropic, or rather inotropic factors. And these ones, they can act on blood pressure in two ways. The first way is by short term. For example, if hormones like adrenaline are injected into your body, or if they are released by the adrenal gland, your heartbeat would immediately increase. The heart rate would increase. The heart would start pumping faster. And when the heart pumps faster, that would imply that also the blood pressure would increase. Because the heart pumping faster would mean that it would raise the cardiac output. It would increase the volume of blood being ejected out of your ventricle every minute, which would increase the blood pressure in general. So, hormones like adrenaline, thyroxine would probably immediately affect your blood pressure by raising it. Then, the other form in which hormonal factors may affect the blood pressure is long-term effect. So, under the long-term effect, we can consider things like hormones like thyroxine itself. If an individual has issues with his thyroid gland, if the thyroid gland is intoxicated, if it's damaged, you would expect it to release thyroxine and in a format which is uncoordinated. And when thyroxine is released in a format which is uncoordinated, it would actually imply that the blood pressure would be raised. You find the individual has a high blood pressure relatively throughout for a long period of time. Another hormonal influence of long-term effect on blood pressure would be the renin-angiotensin system. The renin-angiotensin system. This is mainly connected with the urinary system. It also affects blood pressure in a long-term format. And we shall get to study more details about the renin-angiotensin. It's very interesting in the topic sometime to come. We shall study it in the urinary system when we are considering the kidney, the functions of the kidney. They are very essential in the renin-angiotensin system. It is very essential in the control of blood pressure. It's very essential in the control of blood pressure. Thank you very much. I'm Clinician Birungi Roman. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that we can create more content. Let's learn together.